You see, in our story, there were about 10 pickers that was choosing whether or not to believe in Jesus, whether or not to pick Jesus. See, the pickers in our story are Jesus. He was a picker in the story because he had to choose to actually die on the cross. And then you had thieves next to Jesus that were making decisions about Jesus. You had the centurion at the foot of the cross. You had people in Jerusalem that saw great sights. You see Joseph of Arimathea, who chose to help and believe by offering him a grave. You had the religious leaders that decided to post a guard. And I didn't read that part of the story just because the passage I read was lengthy enough. But there was a group of religious leaders that said, hey, his disciples might steal him away. Okay, so let's post guards so his disciples don't come and rob the grave and take Jesus and say he rose again from the dead. And then the hired guards had to pick. The Roman soldiers that guarded the tomb, they had to pick because they were the first people to see Jesus. Mary, the two Marys, were not the first people that saw Jesus raised from the dead. The first people that saw Jesus raised from the dead were those soldiers, okay, that got knocked off their feet, okay, and the angel came and the stone, I really don't know if they actually saw him. They might have booked up so fast after seeing the angel. Maybe they didn't get to see Jesus actually emerge from the tomb. I think you would have saw a silhouette of me like this. I've been going real fast like that. Once I seen the angel and the earthquake and the stone rolled away, and then Jesus came forth. So maybe the two Marys were the first person to see him, but they knew something was going on, but they still had to choose whether or not to be on the Lord's side and give the Lord's report or to tell a lie that the religious leaders told them to do. So they made a choice to pick the money and the safety instead of telling the truth about Jesus. And you had the disciples that had ran away, but Jesus didn't run away from them. And they still needed to make a choice whether to continue in their despair of the loss of their master or if they're going to make that trip to Galilee to actually go meet him. You see, listen, you picking Jesus, your friends picking Jesus, anybody you ever meet that goes to select Jesus, it's never a head problem as to why they don't pick Jesus. It's always a heart problem, never a head problem, because there's always enough information, there's always enough evidence for a person to pick Jesus. And we're going to see these evidences in a minute, okay? But when it comes down to it, it's a heart problem and never a head problem. Let's just take a look at a few of the truths and a few of the proofs. It says, look in Matthew 27:45. Look at verse 45. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness over the whole land. So it's the middle of the day. And there was a deep darkness, like it wasn't like overcast. That's not darkness. What they're saying is it was as black as night in the middle of the day. That's an evidence that something's going down, that God ain't pleased with, because they are about to kill the light of the world. So God is saying, hey, if you're going to kill the light of the world, let me just see how you do without light today. And there was darkness over the land. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice. He had to make a choice too as he hung up on the cross. He was at peak pain at this point, okay? After they beat him with 39 lashes about the face and the body, and they beat him till bone was exposed, okay? After they smashed a crown of thorns with thorns this big into his head. After they made him carry his own cross for miles uphill. Can you imagine carrying a little telephone pole up a hill after being blood gushing all down? You're weak. You haven't eaten since yesterday. And everything is just, that still wasn't peak pain. They punched at him. They pulled out his beard. I mean, these dudes went on a demonic tirade on Jesus. He was hitting them with everything he could because he didn't want him to go to the cross. He was trying to kill him before he was lifted up. You see, and then he gets on the cross. And the deed of deeds, the thing that hurt him the most, is that on that cross, he bore the sins of the world. Now, I don't know how voluminous the sins of the world are, but I just know how much sin I personally have. Okay? The weight of my sin alone must have been heavy. But the sin of everybody that would ever lived was now on Jesus, to the point that his own Father, and you need to understand, from eternity past, there was this love affair between the Father and the Son, and the Father and the Spirit and the Son, and the Spirit and the Father, and the Son and the Father and the Son of the Spirit, and they were always together. They were always like one. They didn't know what it was like to be apart from each other. And now God, looking upon the sins of the world on his Son, had to turn his back because he was so hideously ugly and stank. And the separation of not being in fellowship with his Father. Have you ever done something? Sometimes at church, confession. Sometimes I do stuff and it hurts my wife's feelings so bad. Well, sometimes I do something, she gets mad at me. And I can tell immediately that the fellowship has been cut off. Okay? And rightfully so most of the time. She's cold as ice. Okay? She won't talk to me. She won't look at me. Okay? I can't say nothing to her. I'm trying to figure this thing out. What can I do? Do I get a megaphone and holler out? What do I do? Do I set the house on fire? What do I do? See, because I can't stand it. You see, I can't stand the separation. Okay? It makes me feel empty on the inside. Okay? But in the back of my mind, I know that she's going to come around. Jesus did not have that guarantee. He did not have that guarantee. Because if for some reason the Father would not have accepted his sacrifice, he would have spent eternity separated from his Father. And he could not take that for granted. So he hollered out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" Okay? And there's people at the foot of the cross talking about Elijah and all this stupid stuff. Elijah, maybe Elijah come back. Somebody trying to give him water. Don't give him the water. Let's see if Elijah will help him. They're making decisions down at the foot of the cross. The Savior of the world is dying for them, and they're talking stupid stuff. Okay? And then he cried out again with a loud voice, and he yielded up his spirit. Okay? This is the unique death. Okay? He didn't die of his wounds. Okay? He was the only person in history to actually be able to force his soul and his spirit out of his body. That's what it means by he yielded up his spirit. He says, no man takes my life from me. He says, I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to pick it back up. Just think about that. Just try to do it. Just try it right now. Go ahead. Just force your spirit right out of you. Just force it out, and then pick it back up. If you can get it out, see if you can pick it back up. That's what Jesus was able to do. And then it says this, behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two. This was a very thick piece of tapestry, torn from top to bottom, not from bottom to top. So that means no man did it, God did it. Tore it from top to bottom. There was earthquakes, stones split. Now stones just don't split. Big boulders don't just split. Even in an earthquake, they don't just split. Stones just start splitting all over the place. And then it says, and people coming out of the graves that have fallen asleep, they were coming out of the grave. Now that's enough proof, y'all. Come on. I mean, if the tearing of the thing, if you're a priest and you looking and you seeing that happen, you say, hey, something going on. And if that wasn't bad up, rock splitting, okay, come on. Okay, and then they coming out of the grave like Thriller, they know, dun, 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 you know. I'm just kidding. They wasn't looking like the Thriller video. Shoot. No, they wasn't doing all that. They wasn't doing that. Okay, they were just coming out. You know, and when they saw all these things happen, they saw the earthquake, and some people had enough sense to say, truly, this was the Son of God. That centurion, that hardened, war-hardened centurion says, truly, this is the Son of God. And the rest of Jerusalem, they don't even get it. But this Roman soldier, he gets it. Because it's not a head problem. It's not that you don't have enough information or enough evidence. It's that your heart is hard.